Well, welcome everybody to our webinar with Ray Fischer, CEO and founder of the strategic online platform AHA. Today, Ray's going to be taking you through a 45-minute webinar on CX and online Qual longitudinal studies, and really talk about how to really maximize the opportunity to ride shotgun on your customer's journey. We're going to do this for about 45 minutes, and leave time for questions from you guys, so you can write them as we go along or save them towards the end. With that, I'm going to introduce you Ray Fischer.
All right, thank you, Bill, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to, as Bill mentioned, take you through my perspective on customer experience journeys and online studies and how they kind of integrate and support the journey. So with that, Bill mentioned we could do some Q&A at the end, but if you do have any questions as we go, feel free to fire those into the chat box on your GoToMeeting dashboard, and then I can kind of, if there's timely stuff, I can look over and address those as we go. Okay, so I'm going to give this a quick little commercial at the beginning here, just a little bit about me for those who don't know me. I know many of you on the actual webinar have met me in the past, and we have customers and prospects out there, so good to meet those who don't know me yet. But anyway, I am a native Detroiter, for those who didn't know that. I have proud heritage here. We're based actually here in Detroit. I've moved around all around the country, but have been back here for about 15 years now, and love it, and am a big part of the rebirth of the city. So my big training and background stuff, and really my first exposure to market research was as a brand manager at Pepsi in the 90s, 80s and 90s actually, if I want to go back far enough there. And my technology experience really came in during the dot-com boom and bust. So 98 to 02, I was heavily involved in the consulting world relative to building online businesses and specifically online technology businesses. So that gave me my foray into technology and gave me the chops that I needed to build the first platform, which we did in 2007. So I consider myself an online Qual pioneer. I did my first study in 2005 on some sort of rigged CRM system that was used for data collection, which was pretty effective. We launched our first platform in 2007 called Living Diary. And we did our first customer experience study in 2007, which was, I guess at the time, we didn't call anything customer experience journey. Now they've obviously been branded since that point in time. But that was our first study, and it went a year long. And many of the things that we learned back in those days apply today as well. So our instincts were pretty good, but obviously things have evolved from a technology standpoint and approach standpoint. And obviously the visibility of doing these longitudinal studies has come to the forefront. We launched AHA in 2012 and been growing like hotcakes since. So I'm going to show you a lot of things that are more about the strategy and the design around customer experience studies, and not really sell the platform so much. You'll obviously see some references to activities and things that we would do in a customer experience journey that we would put together. But again, I'm not here just to sell our individual elements. But before we dive into all that stuff, this is what we do. We have a platform. We license the platform to people like yourselves. You can do things largely DIY or full service or anywhere in between. It's really your call. So we do have the platform. We do help you with study design. We program. We can recruit for you. We project manage to make sure you get great participation. We are global. So we've got all the translation capabilities, and we're available in basically any language. And then if you do need analysis, we can do that as well. Okay. So that's it for the commercial. And now let's dive into what we're doing here today. So what I want to do is share with you my thoughts and experiences around developing strategies for longitudinal studies. And again, this recent move to calling them customer experience studies is pretty recent. But again, the approach has been around for quite some time. So I do want to talk about study design, how you actually execute an effective study. I want to get into a little bit of one of the big important things, and that is how to build or leverage an existing community. You've got a couple different approaches there, and I'll share my thoughts on that stuff with you. Another key thing is obviously once you've got this panel or this community, you've got to keep respondents engaged. So we'll go over some of the basics. We can't go terribly deep on all this stuff, and I'm happy to follow up with people later. If they want to schedule calls with me to kind of go deeper on this stuff, I'm happy to do so. And then finally, of course, you're going to create a lot of data. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the key things to help you get through that data in an effective way. Okay. So 5 key reasons to do these studies. The customer experience, the whole voice of the customer approach has become more important than ever. We've really got C-level buy-in. A lot of this, came from not only like market research, insights departments have been doing, customer experience stuff over time, but it's really been branded by the big consulting companies who have, created this term customer experience, and they've sold it into the real high level. So it's become a C-suite sort of approach. And it's really a mandate in transforming company philosophies about how they treat customers. Okay, so it's kind of customer first and really truly trying to understand it from their viewpoint. Okay, so the whole nature of this is it does allow for continual feedback and touch points over a customer journey. I'm going to show you and refer to most of these today as, like year-long studies. Of course, they can be 3 months in length. They can be a decade in length. So there's really no range that's really the set range, but again, kind of common approach is that 1-year approach, okay? And what you're essentially doing is creating an empathetic relationship with your customers. You're really trying to understand who they are, what drives them, how they feel, how they think, how they act, specifically around not only just their lives, but how your product fits into their lives, okay? And then lastly, it really is all about getting people out of the ivory tower. A lot of corporate people, many of you are on this call today. A lot of you guys, you kind of stay insulated and you don't have direct contact with the normal, quote unquote, normal people out there that buy your goods, products, and services. And again, this can apply to B2B or B2C, but you just don't really mix and mingle with the regular people all that well. You got great jobs, you probably make some good money, and you're, again, not always integrating in with, the regular consumer that might be buying your products, okay? So when you look at quotes, this is some of the big consulting company quotes. I mean, these obviously I'm not going to read them, but these underscore, all the reasons for customer experience. There's so many different reasons for doing so, but these are the quotes that kind of sum up, why it is so important to companies as they reframe their approach to the marketplace. So when we look at online qual and customer experience, I mean, this is the perfect marriage. And again, I mentioned we did our first one in 2007. And it was really just kind of making stuff up as we went, but it really, we really learned a lot, really did a lot of things right at that point in time, have learned a lot since. But again, what this whole technology approach allows you to do is to embed yourself in your customers' lives over time, okay? A lot of times we do studies that are just 3, 4, 5 days in length. And again, those embed you in there and give you great feedback and connectivity. But when you really live on a journey with people, it changes your perspective, okay? And again, technology has given us this direct line. It gives us intimacy, immediacy, emotional connectivity through projective techniques. And it gives us visual, video and pictures that, we weren't capable of gathering really 10, 12 years ago without any kind of, flip cameras or different ways of transmitting video and images to us or to platforms. And that's changed dramatically. Obviously, the iPhone came out, I think, almost 11 years now. So thank you, Steve Jobs. And that's been an amazing tool for all of us to, literally be connected to our consumers in the marketplace. So, and then finally, this gives us an actual connection, and it can be live. So there can be live webcam associated stuff. It can be video that appears live, and most of the stuff that we do and the journeys that you do, you obviously can't be live and with your consumer all the way through, but it is asynchronous. So people come in on their schedule at their convenience to, do whatever activities and things they're supposed to report over whatever schedule you lay out. Okay. So again, why online qual? I mentioned, the iPhone that really changed the game. It's really given us technology-enabled access. So it's really anytime, anywhere. Things that can be done on computers, on tablets, and mobile devices are completely different than what they were, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and things continue to change dramatically. We're going to 5G on cell phones, so that's going to make transmission speeds better. Video can become a bigger player, although it is a huge player right now in online qual. It's going to get even bigger, but the nice thing is there is the ability to connect on any kind of device at any point in time. I've obviously, for those of you who know me, there are philosophies and best practice methods as to what you'll do on mobile versus desktop. You do get more connectivity when people are doing things on a computer. So if you're looking for deep connected responses, they're going to be deeper, longer, maybe more thoughtful when you go to the computer or laptop, a desktop or laptop. Tablets are pretty darn good. Mobile phones are obviously their strength is the video and image capture capability, along with, open ends for sure, closed ends, absolutely. Okay. So again, technology has changed the game. So when we look at customer experience journeys, if we give you an overview, again, these were referred to in the past as longitudinal studies. And again, in theory, they're usually maybe a month. I'd like to think of a quarter as a minimum, but a month to 1 year in length. And again, many people, many corporations have big panels that they maintain on community providers that have lasted for decades, or will last for decades. So they can go really any length of time. But again, I think that real sweet spot is really that 1 year length. Okay. So these could be, driven by a panel that has already been created or custom recruits. They're both expensive, just depending on which way you go. It can be, you got choices. Depending on the budget, a lot of corporations do tap into things like Qualtrics and Vision Critical. And then, for us, for the most part, while we work with those companies as well, we also do a lot of custom recruiting using traditional online qualitative, almost focus group style qual recruiting. So high touch, high screen, rescreen, et cetera. So people are who they say they are, and they're going to be qualified and eager and anxious participants. All right. Management of studies is key. So any study that you do has to have somebody who is truly the community manager. We'll talk more about some of those little details as we go through this presentation today. There needs to be many touch points. You don't want too many, but you do want to have some consistent touch points and a schedule that you manage to. You need to build relationships, incentives drive this whole thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I think that anytime you run any kind of longitudinal thing, you need some kind of, in the moment communication piece. And oftentimes a diary or journal is that nice add-on to do that. And then one thing not to forget is, I'm talking online qual today, but again, if you've got this group of people, this panel, this community, you've got the ability to do quant. So, if your sample size is big enough in your panel, let's say you've got thousands of people, you've got completely statistically relevant sample sizes to run some quant surveys as well. And I would imagine most platforms we do, but I'm sure every other qual platform out there probably was able to run quant studies for you as well, or quant surveys. Okay, so a little mix and match is ideal. All right. So taking it from the top, you absolutely need to develop a strategy, of course, and that's really your baseline. There needs to be a clarity of purpose, and you really need to get your head around what is it that you want to discover over the course of this study. Okay. And then the ultimate question is, how will this shape the future direction of your company? How will this data be used? Will it be taken seriously? Is it going to be part of the template of the go forward strategy of the corporation? Okay. Key things that you got to have internally is organizational alignment. So again, if it's a C-level deal and the CEO's, driving it, or you've got other C-level executives, if it's a CEO, you've got organizational alignment. You have to. Okay. Everybody's going to be involved. Everyone's going to know how important it is, and it's going to be front and center to one of the company's ongoing strategies. So you want to keep things realistic and simple. These can get kind of crazy. If you get committees involved and everything else, it can become an absolute, it can be absolute spaghetti. You don't want that. You want to keep things very clear, very clean, stay to the mission, don't deviate. You do have opportunities to do ad hoc things, but you don't want to just be morphing your strategy over time unless it really requires you doing so. Okay. Keep things realistic and simple. There's going to be so much data that's generated, you don't have to overcomplicate the strategy. Okay. Keep it pragmatic. I mean, people need to understand what you're trying to do. Has to obviously relate to the business, the current status, and the future status. Things that come out of this have to be actionable, so you need an action plan. So again, there can be touch points internally where actions are generated and thoughts and plans are changed over time for the company. But again, at the end of that year, there needs to be actionable direction coming from the full report that details whatever happened over the course of that year. Okay. And again, needs to be relatable to all constituencies within reason. Again, committees and all kinds of people wanting a voice in things, that's fine, but you definitely have to manage that so it's crisp, clean, and doesn't get too confusing as far as what the true mission, true strategy is. Okay, so it needs to be relatable. The whole company needs to understand what people are doing and why they're doing it. And if you can get representation from all the key groups in the committee meeting, so to speak, that's good. But again, you don't want to let this thing be driven by 100 people all wanting to get what they need to get out of it. It has to be done within reason, okay? So what you need to do, of course, is define very clear and somewhat limited objectives. I don't like to see 25 objectives. I think 3 to 5 is fantastic. If it can be less than that, that's amazing. But again, there's always, 3 to 5 things that you do want to get done. So keep it clear and limited. Architect with the end in mind. One thing you got to understand too is the more people you have and the more touch points you have, it's going to generate a massive amount of data, okay? Qual is unstructured data. It is, while you can use some text analytic programs to help you sort through data, a lot of it still is in the human touch zone. So there will be a lot of data. You have to realize that, and you have to make sure you plan to analyze that data and report on it, okay? So again, I mentioned avoid the committee approach. Don't make it a free-for-all. You got to define the customer targets. Okay, who are the customer targets? You got to, again, you've got all kinds of things to think about. Demographic information. You have to pay attention to different, ethnicities, age groups. Is it international? Is it domestic? How does it all come together? But, get your customer targets defined up front. You can always add some in later, but again, it's best to know what you're doing right out of the box and not miss anybody and have to bring them up to speed too quickly as you're already going into your year, okay? And then consider the impact on all stakeholders now and later. It's going to be work for corporations to do this. It's going to be work for insights managers and consultants. So it is going to be a large object to move forward over the course of the year. Lots of hands involved, lots of people having to do things. And then the plan and the resulting plan is going to require people to do things to make it all go, okay? So designing the study, you need to have the roadmap, okay? That's a basic thing. Again, simpler the better. And remember, online Qual will produce a lot of unstructured data, so you got to plan for that. The thing you're going to do over the course of that year, you're going to have a lot of customers that are in this study. You can't overburden them. You can't bombard them with everything that you possibly want to throw at them. It just can't be an open, absolute onslaught of questions and activities every single day of the course of the year, of course. You're going to burn people out, lose them that way. You want to be strategic, have a plan. So you want to stick to that plan. Give a schedule at the beginning. Of course, you can do ad hoc things. So you can flex activities as you go. One of the beauties of doing online Qual in a process like this is the ability to launch things. And then as you go, you're going to learn things. And as you learn things, you can start to plan out, your next month's activities or the month after that based on some things you've learned. So things will come up in the course of a year, things that are outside of the company, things that are political, things that are economically driven. Those things can also impact the future activities. So you don't need to know what you're going to do in October at this point in time. You just need to know that you're going to do something then. And your respondents need to know that as well, okay? So again, you've got this wonderful ability to know, let's say your first month or 2-month plan, and then be able to ad hoc or create on the fly as you go from there, okay? So I put a little schematic together here. Hopefully, I thought it was pretty good. So trying to keep it simple, but also pretty informative here. So what I did here was I put together this 12-month journey schematic, okay, just to kind of give you a sense of how these things work on a high level and then kind of a tactical level, okay? So you're going to have this ongoing community manager that does the moderating and communication. And you can have multiple moderators. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But in this case here, what you've got this 12-month time period. So you've got somebody who's got to bring all this stuff together. So you've got to have somebody who is that key person who drives the project. Could be multiple people. Again, it could be an internal corporate person. Then you've got externally, you may have somebody on the consulting side who is the key person within that group as well. So what I think is great is 1 to 2 touch points per month. So it could be like once a month. Ideally, it's probably 2. So you may have 2 kind of set times when they're going to do something. And that something may be, a 30-minute engagement. It could be a store trip. It could be a video of them using a product. It could be just a deep dive to understand the relationship with the world and who they are, kind of a digital ethnography. So you've got the ability to go through all kinds of different things. What I will do in a few slides, in a few minutes, I'm going to take you through some tactical level things that can be done. I'll show you a little schematic of this on the next page. It kind of gives you a sense of the different things you can do. But one of the other important things that I would always recommend people do over the course of that year, if you do have set activities that are going to happen, is to have some kind of ongoing reporting mechanism of product usage, perceptions, whatever it happens, whenever they might have an interaction that is worthy of reporting, they can make a diary entry or journal entry. Okay, this is great stuff. It gives you an interaction feedback loop that gives you continuous information, and also can be driven by quant stuff, meaning you can have a quant question. It could be a qual exercise, but it could be a rating about the satisfaction level of that particular event or moment that they've interacted with your product and they're reporting back on. Okay, so that helps you. Not only you can quantitatively measure things, but it also helps with some of the analysis. I'll touch on that in a couple minutes. And then finally, underneath, again, truly tactical, is people need to be incentivized. Okay, some panels, like if you look at one of the big panel companies like a Vision Critical or a Qualtrics that runs these communities from their perspective, they may have different ways of incenting people, but a lot of people who put together custom qual recruit journey studies, they have incentive payments, okay? And typically it's nice to have this incentivized at some intervals, okay? You can't be paying people every month. Of course you could. Our approach that has really been a best practice approach that's worked really well for us is to do things like, if you're going to incent them, maybe pay them at the end of the first quarter, so they know who you really are for real. But I wouldn't make this the big payment. So if there is a large payment, and right now the tax rules say your max dollar engagement is $600 per year, if that's how you're going to incent, you might keep this a little bit backloaded. So there's a bigger payment at the end to kind of give them a little holy grail to get to. Again, it's not all that much money to do. And again, if you bench this over a couple of years, you can play with those incentive dollars a little bit more. But if you incent them at the end of the first quarter, let's say second quarter might be a little bit more than the first quarter, third quarter maybe a little bit more, and then again a little bit bigger spiff at the end. Okay, and there's lots of different ways to play around with what you reward them with. I'm always open for discussion on anybody who wants to go deeper on that. Okay, so again, incentives kind of drive this thing. All right, so you want to keep things unique and creative. So what I've done here, I just have another schematic that kind of shows you, month by month, and each of these kind of, you can see these little lines kind of tie into the individual months. And I recommend doing things a little bit differently. You just cannot put out a survey every month to keep people engaged and emotionally connected. What you want to do is do, different things over time. I'll talk a little bit more about what some of these things are later, but there are things like community exercises where people can collaborate, talk, like, and comment on each other's posts. So basically like a social media exercise. Those can be ongoing for short periods of time or long periods of time or over the entire course of the study. You can do things like, perceptual mapping and collaging and store trips and journey mapping and dynamic canvassing. And again, the video piece can become a very big player in this whole, schedule. So as you see here, I've kind of demonstrated the opportunity to do something different each and every month. So again, sometimes you may have a straight quant survey you need to fire out there. It's important to know some certain things, get some checkpoints. Absolutely. Your diary should run throughout, or diary or journal should run throughout the entire year. So that would run concurrent with everything else that's going on. And again, you can drop in other ad hoc things. Again, if your plan is to have 1 or 2 a month, you've got the flexibility to do lots of different things. Sometimes you might just go out and you may have a few open-ended questions and that's it. You may want to show a commercial. You may have some concept testing to do. Whatever it happens to be, you've got this ready at the ready panel, community of people to react, to input, to share, to give you feedback, and to really embed themselves or you in their lives. Okay. So again, keep it unique and creative. Okay. So you've got different ways to go at the panel stuff. So you got lots of different options. Again, I mentioned custom qual recruiting, but let's start up here with the community panel stuff. So there are people out there that do provide panels. Okay. So you can have them recruit that, incent it, deal with it that way. And some of those, again, can be thousands and thousands of people. And some corporations even have their own curated panels themselves. Others, again, will lease them from panel companies and kind of manage things that way. So you've got the ability to have this community panel that way. You can do the custom qual recruit, which is the way we typically do it. And when you do custom qual recruits, you're going to have to budget obviously in all these cases, the budget can be pretty high. Anytime you do a year-long study, you are not talking about, $10,000. You're talking big money. So when you look at the custom qual recruit piece, you're going to have fall off too. So you're going to have to over recruit in any way, shape, or form. But typically, if you want, a set number of people to do everything over the course of that year, you probably have to over recruit by 2x. Okay. So you get custom qual recruit as a way to go. And you can always backfill if you need to, but it's better to start with the right number at the beginning and kind of, through attrition, kind of get to where you're going to be at the end. You can go with customer lists. So it can be things that are developed by companies directly from their customer list if they've got a good database. And then again, there can be curated customers. And this is on the B2B side here in this little bubble here. And the idea there is, we work with several corporations that actually will go out and solicit clients, customers, current customers, and kind of ask them to be on what we call an advisory board. So a lot of times it happens in the B2B front where people who have relationships with big corporations and are thought leaders or, the salespeople or people within the corporation have contact with those customers, feel there will be great input sources. They can curate and recruit a really high quality panel. Okay. All right. So let's see here. So over here, so engagement. So you've got your panel together. Maintaining engagement is critical. The longer the study, the more important this is. You really need to recruit. There's information. Everybody needs to know what is going on at each point of the way. I'm big on communicating. I think a weekly note from the community manager is critical. You want to humanize things. So who's ever moderating or running a study needs to stay in touch, whether that's through probing or that's through, a video introduction or video instructions along the way. That certainly humanizes things and makes people feel a little bit more connected to the technology. Okay. So the interaction front, again, that's more about the probing. So as things go, it's always great to fire a question out or a thank you or whatever that's kind of personal to the individual people. Some of that can be done through AI. Some of that should actually be done by the moderator. Okay. Just depending on how many people you have. And then managing the study. Again, you've got to stay on top of the data and understand going in that you will have attrition. So the more that you stay connected and keep that engagement level high, the better off you'll be. Okay. But you will have people that fade away for sure. Okay. So some of this engagement, as I mentioned, moderator intros, probing, sending little notes to people who make great submissions on things, being involved in some of the, moderator probes to the individual people and to groups. You can kind of target things that way. It's a good way, again, to keep people engaged and let them know that somebody's actually reading this stuff, involved, and it kind of builds a relationship over time. Okay. And then activities, every week, again, weekly notes, put it out. Here's what we're doing this week. This is what this is about. This is what we're going to do. Okay. So with that said, now we've got a lot of data. So you've got your study run, you've executed your strategy, you've deployed all your activities. Over the course of the study, you're going to have a tidal wave of data. Okay. How do you turn that tidal wave into great insights? Okay. So let's talk just a little bit high level about that. Again, we've done webinars on this before. Happy to share those with anybody who might want them. And if there's ever a point in time where anybody wants to talk deeper about this stuff, we're happy to share. Okay. So analyzing the data. This is a divide and conquer function in these long-term customer experience studies. It's a team effort. So if there's segments, let's say you have 6 segments or 5 segments or 4, you might want to divide that by 4 moderators. So everybody kind of controls one individual segment. You can divide this up any way you want, but again, divide and conquer is a good way to go. Okay, keep up with the data. Okay, year-long study, you're going to have things happening every day. Somebody's going to be in there curating the data, analyzing it, looking at it, again, probing, interacting with respondents, etc. But again, if you launch an activity every other week or once a month, it's not that difficult to actively moderate the study. Again, it depends how many people you have, but staying current will help you break the data down. And then also staying current will inform future activities. What I mean by that, again, is what you're going to do 3 months from now will be shaped by what you learn early on. Things change. You guys know that. Things pop up over time. It's always a great opportunity to be able to reframe things and, push new activities with something you didn't even think about 2 months ago down the road. Okay. So reporting timeframes, critical. I mean, sometimes, top lines every month are great. There are ways to keep people engaged, clients engaged with timely, interesting insights. We have a tool we call Newsfeed, Client Newsfeed, that allows people to actually put posts in real time as they come in that are in a real easy to read stream for clients. So it keeps them engaged. They kind of know what's going on at all times. They see some of the cool stuff that respondents are submitting. Okay. But again, you probably want to do something, maybe a top line monthly, maybe a sort of a more midline-ish, depending on how big the study is, how important it is, and what level it's actually going to. You may want to do quarterly full reports or midlines. Then obviously at the end of the study, there's going to be one pretty hefty report. Okay. With all the findings, all the insights, all the directional stuff, and then an action plan. Okay. So analyzing the data, the other thing I mentioned, tidal wave of data, you got a couple key things. I just want to touch on these. Again, this is a webinar in and of itself, but when you deal with qual data, anytime you can create variance, it's awesome. And that means if you have segments where you can do comparison stuff, or you can compare over time, or you can compare emotional ratings, so you've got some quant measures really in all those. Anytime you can use those to separate data and compare people and groups and periods of time and emotions, it's amazing from the standpoint of being able to organize and sort your data. And then there's many things like keyhole tasks. And again, you want to be meaningful, have simple exercises that do this, and they're efficient. And a lot of times what this is again, setting up a quant question before you dive into the qual, okay? That can help you sort. And a simple keyhole task among many is simply rate something, rate this experience. So somebody might be reporting on their diary. Rate this experience 1 to 10 on how you feel about this experience with this particular good product or service. So if they give it a 10 or they give it a 1, you're going to be able to actually compare and contrast the extremes there. So it's a very easy way to separate the extremes and give yourself some quick, easy kind of pre-coded buckets of information to plow through to help you get to your insights faster. Okay. So again, this is, deserving of its own webinar, and we've done a few on this in the past. But again, create variance and create keyhole tasks to help you compartmentalize and code your data simply. Okay. All right, a couple other quick ones here. There's online tools. So, all platforms have some kind of analytic tools, tagging, favorites, etc. Ways of, actually putting data into buckets, kind of staging your presentation. And then over here, you can go offline, like we've got pre-formatted Excel exports that have both images, links to video, and all the text and video transcripts that you could possibly want that are organized by activity level, by respondent, by segment, etc. Okay. And then, the video stuff, transcripts definitely help with video, especially if you have a mass amount of it. You can use text analytics to break through that, or you can use the human approach as well. Okay. All right, so let's go into some tools real quick. So we'll kind of bring this home. So I showed you the schematic with a ton of different things happening every month. What we've got on this one is, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the journaling and diary stuff. So, you want chronicling, of things that happen. So again, you got different examples here. Let's say if it was a water study, hey, every time you have a particular moment with your bottled water, report back on it. These can be done via mobile. They can be video and image intensive, which is awesome. Let's say it's a fitness routine. Let's say somebody's an Orange Theory enthusiast. Every time they go do their exercise, maybe they report back after that session. Or if they're a yoga person or traveling or whatever it happens to be, you can get some kind of report on, what's happened in those moments in time. Okay. So these are usually mobile focused, they're moment driven, they're emotional, they're observational, they're interactive, video and image heavy. And again, there's always usually around the product usage moment. Okay. Doesn't have to be every one, but again, if you stay with reminders with your respondents, they will contribute stuff at the right points in time. Okay, so digital ethnos. So this is something that's usually done in a 3 to 4 day kind of format. You can do these a little bit over time. So you can ask people to give you tours of their office, or their work setup, their life, where they're at in time, etc. They can do storytelling, etc. So you can mix in a lot of projective techniques along the way. So again, in month 1, you might try to get a baseline, some context around who people are. So a couple of exercises may be very projective. Another one, let's say the second one could be about, let's dive into their life and understand their home and maybe the product or their office or whatever it happens to be. So you can really embed yourself in their in their daily life and basically do an ethnography with them that really supports, that whole context around who they are as people. So that's a super critical thing. So think of, home tours, office tours, images of their life, again, ability to mix and match and really drive at attitudes and behaviors. But again, oftentimes these are set up front. Again, as you kick off a study, it's great to really get close to your people, know who they are, what makes them tick, and again, dive into the category at some point in time early on so you kind of get some understanding about product usage, behaviors, attitudes, etc. Okay, so it's really taking that digital ethno, kind of breaking it up into parts over the course of that journey. All right, concept testing. So in the context of a year, you could have some positioning ideas. You could be learning some stuff that came out of another, from a lab. It could come out from some sort of other initiative going on in the company. But you've got this group of people at the ready that you can fire out ideas at and have them report back on how they feel. So again, a little qual quant, depending on how many people you have in the studies, you can test, imagery, words on a page, video, mood boards, whatever it is you happen to do. You can do straight quant, you can do quant qual. I'd recommend the deep dive qual for sure to get a little more context about what drives certain things. You can embed or layer in other tactics and techniques, such as a narrative style approach, where people get really out of their skin a little bit and don't just report back on what they like and don't like. They actually tell little stories about what the ideas are, what they mean to them, in ways like perhaps such as, hey, if you had to share this idea with a friend, what would you say? Okay. And then you always want to get into the pragmatic if you can and ask a little bit about, hey, now tell us what you did like, what you didn't like, and what you might do to improve an idea. So again, you've got this panel of people that are there to weigh in on things that will be happening over points in time. Home use testing, again, this comes in, obviously there's standalone studies frequently, but again, if there's a reason to send product out to people, whether it's a piece of software to a business-to-business person, or if it is a new blender for their kitchen. Okay, you've got the ability to actually embed products in people's lives where they can use them over time. And again, the beauty of this is you can run this and do a ton of different things over the course of that year. But within that, you can have embedded some kind of product usage test that allows them to give you feedback about using that product on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So again, you've got tons of different things you can do there. A longitudinal study, this could be a short piece of it, or again, it could run the entire duration of that year. Okay. Then mobile missions, this is critical. Again, these can be ad hoc or these can be planned. You may have a point in time, maybe you've launched a new product and your company wants to know, like, okay, how do people perceive it on shelf? Again, you've got a panel at the ready that can go out to the store, can videotape their experience, narrate exactly what it is they see, how they view the entire product category from their eye with their words, and give you basically a real-time report back on, how your product is appearing in the marketplace. Could be a change to packaging, could be a new product, could be a different shelf set alignment, whatever it is it happens to be. Again, you've got that ready audience to go out and give you a bird's eye view of exactly what is happening. Okay. And then global, these things can be global as well. Obviously, they get more complicated when you're dealing with lots of different languages, but that's totally possible in today's world. So you can run multi-country simultaneous studies. Translations are critical, as you guys know, so you may need to have moderators. Sometimes people do rely on Google Translate, but usually moderators in market are critical to kind of report back and kind of bring everything back to English or whatever language is your native language. Okay, so a lot of things, a couple things I want to point out here on these international studies. You can run simultaneous studies. Google Translate's a very powerful tool. You're going to want to translate. You're going to want human translation on things like screeners and activity guides, of course. Moderating in native language can make sense, but if people are on a budget, they can use Google Translate. It'll be pretty good and can be augmented as well by human translation if there is any kind of confusion, much more limited than a full-on translator, translating responses. And by the way, most corporations don't translate big qual study responses because of the expense of those. Those can range anywhere from 20,000 to 100,000 just to do that on smaller studies. So on a bigger study, it can be obviously more dramatic than that. So most corporations do rely on Google Translate. Again, good to have native language moderators involved if at all feasible from a budget standpoint. Recruiting is critical. You've got to have great people around the globe, not only recruiting, but obviously recruiting great people for the study. And the better you can do with one-stop shopping, the better off you will be. Depending on your country lineup, there are some big players out there that recruit internationally, and we're tied into those guys. But they can recruit multiple countries, which makes it a lot easier, but sometimes you do have to ad hoc it when there are some kind of obscure countries, such as Indonesia, where you may need to go find an individual recruiter in that company. We're all aware of all the privacy rules that are coming upon us. GDPR has been in effect for almost a year. Actually, in a couple of days, it'll be 1 year of GDPR. I know we've all been, conforming to that over the course of the year. So things will evolve. California's getting a little bit crazier too, by the way, and it's all going to get more intense from a privacy and personal identifiable information standpoint. So we all have to keep our eyes on privacy rules. I mentioned GDPR, but that's really just kind of the bellwether of what's coming. Okay, and then it's always critical. China, being a communist country, we always have to keep on top of the technology and what does fly and what doesn't fly over there. So there's certain things they can and cannot do over there. They do use VPNs. I don't believe they're legal over there, but a lot of times they use VPN. The consumers or respondents over there will use VPNs to communicate with things outside of China, such as platforms that are not based in China. Okay, so you always want to test out your stuff on China before you launch to make sure everything's up to snuff. So finally, any new product stuff, you can do some innovative, collaborative type stuff in these kind of panels too. So there may be a point in time where your innovation team wants to expose your panel to different, product development ideas or processes. Those can be integrated into studies and can be a piece of, that year-long approach. So again, just kind of plan your time accordingly. And again, things can be ad hoc as you go, or you can change your plan. I'd keep the schedule the same. But I would always, again, you don't know what you want to do 6 months from now. So if a new product idea comes up or an opportunity for an innovation exercise presents itself, then you've got the ability to jump on that. Okay. Then custom methods, we're open to custom methods. So if you guys do have any tools that you want to expose over the course of that year, maybe it's different exercises using archetypes or different, then and now type approaches, or different what I'll call visual exercises that are customized. Those are things that can be done as well. Again, it's a great way to mix and match. It's a great way to keep things fresh with respondents, and most importantly, to give you deeper, richer insights about the things you're trying to understand. Okay. So we're in the final thoughts zone here. And let's see here. I think we may have a few questions. Yeah, I think I'm going to just double check that. Okay, if anyone has any questions, just fire them into the chat area. And if we do go over a little bit here, we can always follow up with you individually. Okay, so the final thoughts here, customer experience studies can take many forms. All of these are good. There are lots of different approaches. It's really up to your imagination. But what I presented to you today is what I believe is a really good best practice approach. Again, they can be morphed into really anything you want, but you want to stick with some of those best practice tenets that I presented today. Okay. If I have to go back to this one thing, it's start with a clear and concise study objective. What is it that you're trying to accomplish overall? Of course, you can learn a lot of different things as you go, but you do need to make sure you've got a sustainable objective that will last at least that year. Okay. Organizational alignment is key. We do these with major corporations, and usually there's a point person inside that company who is connected at the very highest level to commandeer the study or to make sure that it runs the way it should, and that all groups within the company understand what the initiatives are, that they've at least got some voice in it. Again, we can't have everybody get everything they want, but there is the opportunity for alignment and getting a voice from every group that will be affected by the customer journey. Okay. So you want to assemble and manage a high quality community panel. I've mentioned all the different sources you have available to you. I will say that in the course of a year-long study under traditional recruiting methods, let's say a high quality Qual recruit, you're probably going to have a 50% attrition. If you do better than that, phenomenal. If you do worse than that, you maybe didn't manage the study as clearly and cleanly as you needed to. But again, if you need 100 people at the end of the day, you need 200. If you need 500, you got to start with 1,000. So that's a recommendation. Obviously, it drives costs up quite a bit, but again, your costs will reduce a little bit with that attrition because you won't pay out all those incentives at the end, but you have to plan for a perfect study, okay? And then finally, the way to make these things go, again, you've got all these corporate responsibilities, all these consultant type responsibilities, et cetera, but you need to keep respondents engaged in a connected human approach. And again, I talked about those ways of doing that. The most important thing that you can do in that regard is regular communication, okay? And that is not only the weekly notes, here's what we're doing this week. If there's nothing going on, make sure people stay focused on their diary, okay? Hey, remember to make a diary entry if it happens this week, that kind of approach. And then your moderators need to probe. Everybody in the study needs to be touched early on and then as needed as it goes forward. You don't want to be too crazy with the probes, but again, a connected human approach, a real person behind the scenes, at least somebody, it could be 4 moderators, but at least they think there's one. A video introduction is phenomenal. So those things all go to create the human approach that we so highly espouse to. Okay. So that is it. Let's see, I think we have a few questions over here. Okay, do you think, all right, here's one. All right, do you think that the more in-depth, intimate responses available via desktop versus mobile will swing to mobile within the next couple of years? When, if at all, do you think mobile responses will surpass desktop in quality insight? Okay, excellent question. So thank you, Spencer. All right, so, you know, there's always going to be, I guess you could say a couple things. I have a few thoughts on that. One, what we've seen so far is that there's always more depth in desktop, laptop responses to big questions than there are on mobile. However, video responses are getting better, and the transcription of those video responses can give you a lot of depth. So I would say that those will pick up in quality over time. I do think, again, your video and image capture capabilities are truly amazing, and that sets everything apart for mobile as a very definitive and an excellent tool to use. But again, I think that gap can close, and I think some of that will be just based on the ability to transmit more video, again, with transcription, which will be driven by 5G. So that's definitely something that is going to happen. The other thing too that I think we will see over time, and I will not stay firm on my approach that it's always going to be better, that desktop, laptop is better than mobile for deep responses, is if you ever watch some of these younger people, younger kids, teenagers, et cetera, you know, people in their 20s who grew up with smartphones in their hands, these people can really type fast with their fingers with their thumbs. It's just amazing what they can do on a mobile device. So I will say that will get better and that gap will close. So excellent question. Let's see here. Here's the next one. What do the true experts of using the platform do that a beginner might not know? And that's from David H. And I think I know who David H. might be. Hello, David. True experts using the platform that a beginner might not know. I think, you know, one of the key things I would say is a lot of times new people to online qual try to do too much. They try to build in too much. They try to ask lots of open-ended questions when there are so many techniques that can, while open-ended questions are critical, the more projective techniques you can build in, you can get deeper layers of responses. And a quick aside to that is, let's say, using a collage. So you might ask somebody how they feel about buying a new car. So they'll give you a text response. It's pretty good. You know, that's fine. It's going to be nice. You may have had a nested question. They give you a little bit of elicitation there. But what's beautiful is if you use a collage and say, pick 7 images from this carousel or this gallery that define your images, and they've got a set of maybe 50 to choose from, and they pick different emotional images, it changes the game completely. So now they're connecting with their emotions at a level they wouldn't have thought of with an open-ended question. So in the collage, they're actually going to lay out, you know, hey, I picked these images because I feel frustrated or happy or trust or distrust or frustration, anxiety, whatever it happens to be. they will actually tap into their emotions at a level that an open-ended question will not be able to get at. So you basically truly turn it into a projective exercise and get layers of emotional and psychological depth you wouldn't get from an open-ended question. Hopefully that helps. Now, here's another one. This is from Jacques. What is your opinion on getting close with the community you develop to increase humanization and retention engagement? Creating personal connections with community member to have more opportunity for organic free responses. Okay, really cool way to do that. Since you're going to ask people oftentimes and more as we go forward in time, we're going to ask them for more video, more images, but video in particular. Moderators have to get comfortable using video themselves. So the ability, and again, the face-to-face, there's live face-to-face opportunities, but there's also the asynchronous stuff where what I would do, if I'm running a year-long study, for instance, or even a couple-day study, every time I communicate, I'm going to start with a video. And I'm going to do 90 seconds to 2 minutes explaining what it is that we're trying to do and what you're required to do. It just makes it so much better. And if it's conversational, you can be casual, be in your sweatshirt, be in your house, be out and about, do it in a cool place, whatever it happens to be, but make it comfortable, because these people are in their sweatpants. They're in their, their casual gear when they're doing these studies at home. So try to communicate on that level. And again, using video to create that connection and prove that you're a real person too, it really establishes a relationship. So remember, a video will allow you to basically be doing a one-to-one with 40, 50, 200 people at once, okay? Because they're all gonna watch the video if you do it well. And I'm happy to share examples of great ones over time. Again, if anyone wants to follow up on stuff like that. Okay, excellent question. Thank you, Jacques. All right, next question. How long can a video be when we use your platform? Honestly, a video, that's a great question, and we tested that out a long time ago. It's going to get better, obviously, with 5G, but it's really unlimited. The sweet spot for respondents is in the 1 to 2 minute video response. Now, we get them all the time. Show me the store aisle, take me to the cereal aisle, show me your office. And those are oftentimes, if people are real verbose, those can be 2 or 3 minutes in time. But again, the 1 to 2 minute expectation is great. If they go longer, great. Video, you still have to break down a video. It's best to watch it all, of course. You can get transcripts, of course, automated or human. So you can read through the data that way or text and analyze it that way. Yeah, you don't want to ask for too much in that regard. But I will tell you one funny story. We did a home audio file exercise about two or 3 years ago, I think. And this guy from New Jersey who had like the greatest sound system ever put into a house, and it was really kind of a mansion. This guy went for 35 minutes showing us his system, and it all came through. It was a massive file, like 800 meg, but it came through in one fell swoop. Just took a little time to upload, but again, as communication speeds get better, cable connection or whatever, wherever we're going to evolve to there gets better. Whenever the 5G kind of gets implemented, longer video is going to be totally possible. Okay. All right. So here is the next question. Do you have an built-in AI capability to identify emerging themes in real time among large groups of people, providing feedback simultaneously? Bruce, thanks. Great question. We are working on that now. The key thing about that is, let's see here. Going back to your question. Yeah, we're working on the AI piece of that right now. A lot of our studies, are not 1,000 people. So the text analytics engines are not truly small data friendly as they are for big data. But again, we're working on that. We don't have the ability to actually text analyze everything yet, but we're working with a couple outside vendors and some AI companies that are helping us put that together down the road. Excellent question. All right, and let me just go back and clear this, make sure there are any other ones on here. Give me 1 second here to make sure I got everything covered. All right, I think we got it all. I don't think there's a couple other ones I can answer. Let's see, I think that's it. Okay, so let's go over here to my final slide. So finally, you guys, obviously this is me. This is my contact information. So I am all about talking about online qual anytime anybody wants to pick up the phone, as long as I can, I'm available or we schedule it. There's my email address, screen cap it if you want. There's our website. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please reach out. It's great to have connections. And I do publish a fair amount of content, either to the joy or chagrin of many of you, but I do push a lot of content out there. So if we're connected on LinkedIn, there's often a lot of stuff for you to review, and our website has a ton of different perspectives from me over the last several years in video format, if you can handle it, that will share what I'm thinking. And again, we're going to do another video production run this summer to kind of give my thoughts on what's going to happen in the future. Okay. So with that said, I really, really appreciate everyone who's on this particular webinar. Everyone have a fantastic day. And again, feel free to reach out if we can ever help. Thank you.